Yeah, because in the past I interviewed a gentleman who talked about the World Bank, Bush Sr., Dick Cheney, and how the First National Bank, which is the Mormon bank, had got involved, started lending out these gigantic loans to these countries that can't afford to pay them back. So then they turned around and they said, okay, we'll allow your bank to start printing money, and we'll go buy that business. We'll put about 10% down, and your bank will print the rest of the money to buy the rest of the business. And that leads right into the next question, is that you wrote a book which is called Overthrow a Fascist Regime on a $15 a Day, the Internet Irregulars versus the Power to Be. Could you tell us a little bit about that book?
Well, it was basically to let people know that on a very small budget you can try to compete, and sometimes you can succeed in competing with the major media. The Internet's the only tool we really have left. In the past, of course, in the Soviet Union, there was a Samizdat press, small printing presses that put out information on paper that basically challenged the Soviet Communist Party media apparatus. But with the Internet, my attempt in the book was to show that living in Washington, D.C., which is one of the most expensive capitals in the world, you can at least make an attempt using the Internet and using it, with a very frugal budget, you can compete with the Fox Newses, with the Rupert Murdochs of the world, with the Bill Gates and the MS-NBCs and the Disney and their ABC and Time Warner and their CNN. It can be done, and that's basically the book's about how over the last 8 years I was able through writing articles on the Internet and starting my own website and basically competing with these mega media companies.
And what is your website so the listening audience can go visit later on?
Yes, it's WayneMadsenReport.com. It's WayneMadsen report all together.com, and it's basically what I'm trying to reinstate in Washington is the spirit of muckraking journalism that existed here for many, many years in syndicated columns by first Drew Pearson with the Washington Merry-Go-Round, and after he passed away, it was taken up by Jack Anderson, who's also, unfortunately, a few years ago passed away. He had been sick for many, many years. But that kind of journalism where you write about the dirt, regardless of threats of lawsuits and regardless of whether you get invited to parties or not, that kind of journalism really doesn't exist here any longer. And my intent was to basically reinstate that type of journalism here in the nation's capital.
So you're telling the truth. You're telling people the truth is what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with the corporate media is many of these reporters socialize with the people they're supposed to cover. They go to the same golf courses, same country clubs. They go to these White House correspondent dinners, and they sit there and they joke. It's all joking and laughter with this camaraderie. Journalists are not supposed to socialize with the people they're covering. It's okay to talk to them as far as that kind of social, but not to become friends. You cannot be an investigative journalist and have these relationships with the people you're covering. It's just not journalism to do that.
And you wrote an article on AIG, who was recently bailed out to the tune of $85 billion, U.S. taxpayer money. And AIG, the reason why it was bailed out is you were saying that it had been involved with some CIA operations. Could you tell us about that?
Well, yes, AIG is an old, very old company. It was actually started by Cornelius Starrs. That's spelled S-T-A-R-R, and anyone who followed the Bill Clinton impeachment hearings probably remembers Ken Starr, who was the independent counsel who was basically prosecuting Bill Clinton. Cornelius Starr, the founder of AIG, that's Ken Starr's uncle, and then Ken Starr's uncle Cornelius eventually turned over control of his company to Maurice Hank Greenberg. He's the guy who runs it to this day. And Cornelius Starr was in China for many years after World War I in the interim period, and established a relationship with OSS, and then which became the CIA. And it's quite clear that, especially Chinese intelligence, that AIG has always been a front by which the CIA would bring businessmen into Asia under non-official cover as AIG executives or employees, and then they would perform their various tradecraft in places like China and Japan, Hong Kong, Taiwan, and other countries.
Could this also have been a CIA cover for bringing the poppy back to United States and Canada via when the AIG representatives return back to North America, that they bring back the poppy crop with them?
Well, I mean, the history of U.S. trade with China is, of course, you go back to the Opium Wars. In the late 1800s, there actually is a group of Cheneys. Yes, it's Vice President Dick Cheney's ancestors who were members of the Skull and Bones, and you can go and look in the membership rolls of these Cheneys from Connecticut. Now they eventually went to Nebraska, and Dick Cheney's group went off to Wyoming, but the original Cheneys were listed as being in the silk trade with China. Well, the silk trade was nothing more than a code word for the opium trade in those days.
And also, on May 18th of 2006, you wrote an article which talked about the Cuban and Venezuelan government intelligence concluded 911 was an inside job. With this in mind, do you feel that one of the reasons why members of the Bush regime have on more than one occasion attempted to overthrow President Hugo Chavez is because these individuals are afraid of anyone who is able to undermine their words with real evidence?
Oh, absolutely. But Chavez and President Ahmadinejad of Iran, obviously they both said that they think 9/11 there was much more to 9/11, as has some of the leadership of Cuba. They're easy targets, but we've had former government ministers in Britain and in Germany, and even the head of the upper house of the Japanese Diet have all come out and said they believe that 9/11 was an inside job. But it's easy, of course, to demonize Chavez and Ahmadinejad because we are actively trying to overthrow their governments, whereas it might be a little harder with the governments of Germany or Japan. But they're certainly not lone voices. And we actually had the former president of Italy, Francesco Cossiga, say the same thing, that he knew that 9/11 from his sources, he has a lot of them in NATO, he said that 9/11 was not only an inside job, but it was planned by Israel's Mossad.